Horror movie 101. You take a group of youthful friends, you have them travel to the middle of nowhere. They get lost. They end up finding a desolate house or cabin, and then they get murked. Except this time, it's not Jason. It's not a Blair Witch. It's not a demon summoned from the book of Necronomicon. No, think biblical. Think angelic. Think about female angels in the nude eating humans. Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel. I'm the Tinysapien, and also welcome to this particular subset in my channel titled Curious Cat, which is a succinct way of saying the old proverb, curiosity killed the cat. So on here, I will be reviewing movies that pique my interest at face value. What determines if I watch the movies reviewed on here will range from simply reading the title, maybe a familiar name that's associated with the film, or maybe it just had a cool movie poster. Again, something that just catches me at face value. I just wanted to give this quick briefing before we continue with this horrid sleaze fest. You know when you have nothing to watch, so you go and browse around a streaming service, searching for something that will intrigue you at face value. I was doing the same thing, except in a different context. I was at a store looking around their movie selection when I came across that movie, and in the front cover it reads the name Tom Savini, and that's all it took for me to make that purchase. I enjoy making blind purchases when it comes to movies, because sometimes when you end up with a movie that has a lot of replay value, it leaves you happy that you purchased it. Unfortunately, this movie made me wish I had Matt Murdock's vision instead of Stevie Wonder's.
What y'all don't know, Stevie can see. Stevie can see. It's just an act.
He can see?
Stevie can see.
Forest of the Damned, or renamed Demonic for its US release, is directed by Johannes Roberts. You know, Johannes has directed other movies that the casual movie-going audience is familiar to, like 47 Meters Down Uncaged, The Strangers Prey at Night, the latest installment of the Resident Evil franchise, and In the Deep, which could also be used as a metaphor to describe the reviews his movies garner. He does seem to have a proclivity for directing movies that are not very well received, and this movie in particular was made in the early part of his directing career. Forest of the Damned is a by-the-numbers horror film. Its plot is one and the same as the classic horror trope of a group of friends who take a trip and they either end up lost in the middle of nowhere or in the forest only to get slaughtered. And Johannes made no mystery about it. He mentioned in the commentary track that he took a look at the current horror market, what was playing at the time, and he saw things like Wrong Turn, and he endeavored to replicate that. Making a movie out of a familiar horror trope isn't essentially bad. It can go bad. It can be lazy, and at times it can get uninspiring. I mean, just take a look at some of the sequels for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. But then, other times, you get Sam Raimi making Evil Dead 2. So a trope is not bad, it's how you present it, your take on it. Roberts had one interesting element about this movie, and that was the lore that he created for his creatures/monsters. The first thing we see from this film is a quote from the Book of Enoch, which spoils the interpretation that we're supposed to take away from these creatures. And that's, counterproductive because it takes some of that allure, that mystery from them. Spoiling the interpretation of these creatures defeats the purpose of him attempting to have these creatures translate as artsy. And that was something he was trying to do. And they do have an element of art house to them, especially in the subtext, in the way that they lure in their prey. They have this gaze that hypnotizes anyone, and it induces this insatiable lust to make love to these creatures. Anyone, unless you're an attractive woman. And this inability to bewitch attractive women wasn't something that Roberts intended from the beginning. It was mentioned in the commentary track that after casting Francesca Kingdon, I'm pretty sure I'm butchering her last name, he says that he came to the conclusion that these creatures could not seduce a beauty like hers, which did little to nothing in adding intrigue to the story in this movie. I'm pretty sure it changed the intended ending for this movie, but it added nothing to the story. The only people who would not get spoiled by the quote that was shown at the beginning of the movie are people who aren't familiar with biblical stories. But then again, if that quote wasn't spoon-fed to us, there was not much in this film that implicitly allowed us to decipher what these creatures are supposed to be. What he could have done was created scenes that told a biblical allegory and alluded to his idea of what these creatures are. So the biblical influences for this film were the making of the Nephilim. The Nephilim are human angel hybrids that were conceived after angels in heaven lusted after the daughters of men, and consequently they were kicked out of heaven. That was the allegory that we were supposed to interpret from this film, but instead it was spoiled from the very beginning. So the Nephilim, right? They are these giant human angel hybrids. And for this movie though, I'm not sure if the creatures are meant to be the angels that are down here lusting after the humans, or if these are a new interpretation of what the angels and the humans conceived. Instead of conceiving the giants, they conceived these creatures. I'm not sure. The juxtaposition of having art house characters inserted into a plot that's become a classic overused horror formula, I find that extremely intriguing, and it's something that can only be done in the indie scene. However, unfortunately here, it just wasn't very well executed. It's supposed to be like this dumb, fun popcorn movie that gives you that thrill, you know, that feeling when you have an unsuspecting killer in the woods, like Friday the 13th. This movie just doesn't excite. It gives you no thrill. It's not fun. It builds no actual suspense, and when it tries, it just fails. The only entertainment value comes from this one actress. Her name is Sophie Holland. In the movie, she's named Alvee. Yeah, the only entertainment value came from her because she's funny. She's this, her character, she plays a character that's, she's rude, irreverent. She always has like these snarky comments towards the rest of the crew.
What's wrong?
What were you thinking?
I think my baby brother has finally found something that's uglier than he is. Isn't that why you bought it? I guess at least with the van you could try and fix it up a little bit.
How? Through the woods like a wild man.
Wow! Cool! This is a death trap and a piece of shit.
And then they kill her because her character is the, to Johannes standards, the conventionally unattractive girl. So therefore she can be seduced by these angel human hybrids. The nudity in this film that came from the main antagonists, the creatures, they were nude all the time, by the way. It just came off as too fan servicey, especially when Johannes is trying to create them as these artsy, complex characters with some subtext beneath them. It just did not mesh well. And sure, you could say it's paying homage to this formula of movies, but it was just too excessive at times. There was times where I thought this movie was going to straight up just turn into a softcore porn. There's one scene in particular towards the end. The leading actress's boyfriend falls into this hole, and then the human angel hybrids they all surround him and they're all hissing at him in a very erotic manner. It was just like reminiscent of a softcore. And this movie could have easily been slumped into the category of like an erotica horror film. You know, the decision to have the creatures, the monsters of the film in the nude for the rest of the film is not actually necessarily like setting yourself up for success at the box office. And that's something that Johannes seemed convinced of. The exorbitant amount of nudity wasn't the only thing that plagues this film, as I mentioned. Another issue with this film were the camera angles. So at the beginning of the film, after we get the quote from the Book of Enoch, we get this aerial shot of the forest, right? It's meant to create that atmosphere of horror where the creatures hunt. But Johannes mentioned that this shot came from this overhead shot came from a hot air balloon. And it's painfully obvious that it was not high enough, because there's a point of that shot where I was convinced that it was just some guy filming around a Christmas tree. It did not look appealing at all. And this was the first shot that we get in the film. I just don't know why he just green-lit that. It's bad, and I don't understand why he didn't edit that out and just created something else for the opening shot. My guess would have to be that maybe he didn't want that budget money that was spent on the hot air balloon to go to waste. And after he watched that final edit and saw the visual presentation this movie gives off, I don't know how he was that confident. The name, the man that prompted me to purchase this movie, Tom Savini. His character in this film is a peculiar one. His character says that he's waiting for his turn to be with these creatures, have sex with them. It's not explained why they don't kill him, even though he has a home in the middle of the forest. He must have some sort of alliance with them. I'm not sure if there's like a biblical explanation for it, but his character ends up getting killed by the couple. Sally ends up having to fend for herself after her boyfriend gets killed. And eventually she's hunted down by one of these human angel creatures. And just when you think she's about to get eaten, she ends up having this Attitude Era WWE tongue wrestling match with this creature.
They're ready to get it on. Here they go. Oh, here Look at this. Oh, man. The fight is on. Would you like to see a rematch? Yes. Wait. JR, you're brilliant. Rematch. Rematch now, right now.
Then the movie cuts to a year later. And there's Sally hitchhiking in the middle of the forest when this man pulls up. So this guy that picks up Sally, he's a director.
Yeah, that's me. Well, I wrote it. I'm a horror writer.
You're reading your own books?
Well, somebody's got to.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
And he's also in the commentary track, so he's buddies with Johannes. So I'm guessing this was an excuse to plug his book. Yeah, I'm guessing one of these creatures ends up placing some spikes in the road, which he runs over, blows out his tire. He gets out of the car and they munch on him. They eat him. So I'm guessing Sally is now taking the place that Tom Savini's character played. I'm not sure if she's like a mother figure to them now, or she's their keeper because, you know, they can't seduce attractive women. But there's this girl from the opening scene that has very little to do in the film. After her boyfriend gets eaten, she just sort of wanders around the forest till she gets run over by the group of friends. But she doesn't become the keeper. This movie, man. Anyways, they just do this like close up on Sally's crucifix, and that's all Roberts wrote. This movie reminds me of some of those films that categorize themselves as eroticas, but they have a very loose plot with no story in it and no attempt to be erotic. It's just like a purfest. I mean, this movie is not that egregious, but he cooked up a bit of a sleaze fest in this one.